Joining us, I am YORI FOLARIN. My guest this morning is Dr. Muda Yusuf. He's CEO of that is the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise, CPPE. As you know, Dr. Muda Yusuf is an economist, and we should be looking at aspects of the president's speech yesterday night. By most accounts, if not all, a very, positive speech, a welcoming, sort of explaining, because what we have here is that the president was doubling down with copious explanation as to why it had to be so. In fact, the partial caption of his speech was, "After darkness comes the glorious dawn." So the president was saying that, I understand, I see the pain, I feel the pain. But he was putting in there that it's going to be better, and took time off to explain it. Let's just go to a sort of film report, and then we'll come into studio and we'll talk about it.
It's important that you understand the reasons.
The nationwide broadcast by President Tinubu is appealing to the hearts and conscience of Nigerians as the federal government continues with the implementation of tough decisions that will turn around the economy of the country in the long run. The president painstakingly explained the removal of fuel subsidy and why Nigerians should trust the process that has so far saved more than 1 trillion naira for the country within 2 months.
In a little over 2 months, we have saved over 1 trillion naira that would have been squandered on the unproductive fuel subsidy, which only benefited smugglers and fraudsters. That money will now be used more directly and more beneficially for you and your families.
The removal of fuel subsidy has caused significant disruptions in different aspects of national life. But President Tinubu has now announced the introduction of deliberate measures that will have far-reaching impact in the short term. Most important is the injection of funds into the economy to help small and medium-scale enterprises. And his administration also intends to stimulate the growth in the manufacturing sector.
Our administration recognizes the importance of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises and the informal sector as the drivers of growth. We are going to energize this important sector with 125 billion. Out of the sum, we will spend 50 billion conditional grant to 1 million nano businesses between now and March 24.
There is, however, cheering news for public servants, as the president promised that an upward review of the national minimum wage is imminent.
We are also working in a collaboration with the labor unions to introduce a new national minimum wage for workers. I want to tell you, our workers, that your salary review is coming.
As the days begin to count, Nigerians also hope that the implementation of these programs of government begin to have real impacts on their lives and livelihood. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Abuja.
Okay, thanks to our Femi Akonde. So, Dr. Yusuf, there you have it. Now, you particularly being of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, I imagine that there's a lot that you will approve of in the president's speech, especially as his emphasis was he needed to stimulate small businesses and medium businesses. Yeah. So generally, it's like the president was saying that it is tough, I'm aware of it, but please bear with us, and it's going to be better after this. In fact, I was surprised when he said in the region of 1 trillion naira had been saved in just 2 months, Doctor.
Yes, I think in terms of the quality of messaging, I think it's very, very, it's something that is very, very positive, okay. And in terms of what I can also call a form of credit subsidy.
Okay.
Because when you give concessionary credit, concession in terms of the interest rate, because he talked about 9% interest rate, and as you know, our monetary policy rate is now 18.75%. So if you have an opportunity to access funds at 9%, that's a significant subsidy in credit.
And this is coming from what was it like in the last regime, for instance?
No, I mean, we are talking interest rate out there now is close to 28-30%.
And he is saying a maximum.
Especially for SMEs.
Yes.
You know, now we are talking about 9%.
A maximum of 9%.
A maximum of 9%. Now, again, we're also looking at the tenure of the facility that he has promised. Some of the tenure is as high as 60 months. It's about 5 years.
That's right.
So it cannot be any better in terms of the credit that is made available. But what we have had, the challenges we have had in the past has been that of implementation to ensure that these facilities get to the right people. We had that issue especially with all this micro-lending, anchor borrowers program, and so on and so forth. Trader money. There were all sorts of issues as to effectiveness of the targeting of those things. So the administration needs to work, you know, very well on that area.
To be sure that it is executed according to concept.
Exactly. So that is one, and that is excellent. It's a very good measure of intervention. And I must also say generally that the fact that the president came out to speak himself and to express this compassion, this empathy, and seeking the understanding of the citizens, I think is something that we must also appreciate. Because when the citizens are going through this kind of challenge, and you don't hear directly from the leader, there's a way it makes you feel. You begin to wonder whether the leadership even know how we are feeling. So with this kind of communication, and I hope that we see more of that, I think it's something that is very positive from a governance point of view. However, you know, in terms of what the citizens out there are feeling, first, the citizens are worried about high cost of food.
That's right.
They are worried about high cost of transportation. They are worried about high cost of energy. So whatever interventions we are getting, you must prioritize those key areas.
And he even spoke about this, Doctor, because you remember he had said that, quoting now, in the short and immediate terms, we will ensure staple foods are available and affordable.
Affordable. That is very key. So the framework for the delivery of that, we need to see more robust action. Because, yes, we can release grains, we can release fertilizers, you know, but that may not go far enough. It is part of the solution, though. And he talked about engagement with stakeholders in the agricultural value chain.
Yes.
Which is very key. Because when we are faced with this kind of emergency, as it were, engagement of stakeholders is very, very critical. Because you cannot understand the sector better than those who are operators in that sector. And if you want the sector to deliver some outcomes for you, you need to engage them to know the kind of intervention that they need. So that is very critical. And I'm happy that he alluded to that.
Indeed.
The outcome of that engagement, I'm sure we still await. But when we get that kind of engagement, the outcome of such engagement, it will help to refine some of this intervention. If there are things that needed to be added to this, that engagement will throw it up. So that is very critical. And he talked about engagement across the entire value chain, right from the primary production of agriculture to the transportation, to the processing, to the marketing, to the inputs, to the financing. All those things are very, very critical.
Indeed. And part of, 500,000 hectares of, of farmland to be put more in line with the all-year-round farming.
Yes,
You know.
yes,
So
yes.
I'm sure that is also part of it.
It's part of it, you know, and of course, the biggest issue in agri production now is insecurity. I know it's also top on his agenda. You know, he had a meeting with the service chiefs and doing all sorts of things, investing a lot in arms and ammunition and all of that. But that is extremely critical. Because these smallholder farmers, they account for over 80% of the food that we eat. I'm talking of the Nigerian food. And with the kind of insecurity that they are facing now, you know, it is difficult for them to supply all that kind of food. And it's a major issue.
But can we really achieve our aim with, as you put it, these are small artisanal farmers? I mean, we would need to sort of scale up to the industrial level, or do these things have to be taken in stages?
No, it can be taken together. And if you listen to his speech, he also alluded to the fact that even the large-scale farmers will be involved in this. You know? So it has to be taken together, both the smallholder farmers and the big-time farmers. Of course, the nature of intervention also varies. Because if you look at even the financial intervention that he mentioned, they are categorized.
That's right.
There's a 75 billion for the big companies that can access up to 1 billion naira. There is the nano credit, which is even a grant of 50 billion for all these micro enterprises, you know? And you have the ones for SMEs at about, I think, 120 billion. So all of those things are very, very critical. But we need to have complementary policies, because all of these things is not only about money. It's also about policies. Now, let's take transportation, for instance. Okay. That's another key pain point for the citizen, cost of transportation.
Apart from power. I'm sure you come to that.
Yes, we come to that.
Because we're in the middle of the power people trying to apply for an increase.
Now, if you look at transportation, almost 95% of transportation today is by road. So that speaks to what is the cost of vehicles. Let's leave the issue of even fuel, the cost of vehicles itself. Because the availability of vehicles could also help to moderate prices if people can access those vehicles at a much cheaper cost. Of course, he talked about CNG.
He also talked, that's the fuel for it.
Yes, you know. And 3,000 buses to be facilitated by government. But that is the one that is coming from government. Those who are sustaining the transportation sector today are the private sector people.
Indeed.
Whether we are talking about the keke people, we are talking about the Okada riders, we are talking about all these buses, downfall buses, all these interstate buses, luxurious buses, all of them are in the private sector. Let us put policies in place to make it easy on their own to be able to afford and buy those vehicles at a much cheaper rate. And then, even companies who want to buy buses for their staff, even state government, local government who want to buy.
Some state governments have started on that.
They have started.
Lagos, if I remember correctly, was being shown some of its new buses.
Exactly. Exactly. But we need policies to support those things. Right now, import duty and import levy on those vehicles are very prohibitive. So, if you have the right kind of policies to deal with the import duty on those, I mean, take for instance, look at the roads, all these Uber guys, all these young people. If you hear the cost of those vehicles now, they're extremely prohibitive.
They are, yet they can't put it all on the passenger.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
extremely prohibitive, because they are talking about 40% import duty.
So these are areas that government could further come into.
Exactly.
Let me quickly go on a break, Dr. Yusuf, and when we come back, we'll continue with this conversation and also take your call. Stay with us, please.
On my Dark marks have tried everything. Nivea Lumina 630 works from day one with visible results in just 2 weeks and 71% dark marks reduction in 12. Join the 1 million women already using Lumina 630 from...
Okay, our guest is Dr. Muda Yusuf, and we're looking at the President's national broadcast yesterday. And Dr. Yusuf was just saying that this private sector actually is going to have to bear a lot of this. Indeed, the President himself had said in his speech yesterday that the expertise of development finance institutions, commercial banks, microfinance banks will be tapped into to develop a viable and appropriate transaction structure for all state, organs.
Yes,
You're going back to where there is the expertise, as opposed to government just doing what they need to do, and only later on to find out that, look, if only we had been consulted with.
Yeah.
You have pointed out some people.
Yes. You see, the importance of that was to ensure the effectiveness of the management of those intervention funds. Mm-hmm. That was the context in which he was talking about seeking the expertise of some of these people so that the funds don't go into wrong hands, so that we don't have situations where people take the money. Because it is not a dash, it's a loan, except for the 50 billion component that is talked about being a grant for the micro enterprises. So that kind of framework for effective delivery of results is very important. But just to land on the issue of fiscal policy,
yes,
as it relates to transportation, is to advise that we need to review the charges and the import duty on these vehicles so that the private sector across all levels can complement the efforts of government. These things are important because if it's too expensive to buy all these buses, 18-seater, 15-seater, all these Toyota Corolla brand, those things are playing a major role in the transportation ecosystem.
Indeed. So you're talking
including all these luxurious buses and so on.
I was going to ask if you're speaking now, because even the cost of cars have become prohibitive, but on the other hand, those that do have cars, how are we sure that they can actually afford to fuel it at today's prices? But nevertheless, I wonder if you're talking specifically about, excuse me, about commercial vehicles.
It is both. Okay. I'm saying that because if you go out there, you have all these young men and women who are into this e-hailing service.
Yes.
Many of them are graduates. Mm-hmm. But because they don't have the kind of job that they need, they fall back on that. And it will amaze you the number of people that the jobs that thing is creating. In addition to the transportation facility that they are providing for citizens. Not everybody wants to be putting his or her cars on the road.
That's right.
Sometimes it's more convenient for you.
If there are alternatives.
If there are alternatives. Exactly. Secondly, some of these smaller cars are more fuel efficient. Some of the guys now in the middle class who are riding all these fuel guzzling vehicles.
8-cylinder vehicles.
8-cylinder. They are looking for options now.
That's right.
If as part of the palliatives, they have the option of having all these small cars, some of them will go for it and park this other vehicles.
Maybe just weekend driving.
Just weekend driving.
If at all. Mm.
So these things have to come together as part of intervention. So we need to see a lot more from the policy intervention side. That is the point I'm making. Yes, this financial intervention is good, but policy intervention first, it will be instantaneous. If the president announced today that I'm cutting import duty on buses by 50%, you will imagine what will happen at all these car dealers, and suddenly those prices will drop. All these rickety buses that you see on the road, many of them cannot replace them.
That is true.
And they are posing a lot of safety risks to citizens. And because all these commercial vehicles have some powerful influence and all of that, to regulate them is a big issue for the authorities.
Indeed.
So they put all manner of vehicles on the road, endangering the lives of the citizens. So let us make it more affordable. by adjusting some of this levy, because there is import duty of 20%, there is also a levy of about 20 or 30%. By the time you put all that together, it makes it extremely difficult. And for those who are producing vehicles locally, let us also roll out incentives for them. What they use for their local production is what you call semi-knockdown parts, SKD.
Okay.
If you need to waive their duties for them, let us waive it. Let us give them tax incentives. Now, people can argue that this may affect revenue. But let me also say this. The president announced that in 2 months, you have saved 1 trillion naira. The total customs revenue in 2022 was 2.5 trillion naira. Total
for the year.
And if you know what the citizens go through paying this customs duty, you will feel sorry for those who are investors and even ordinary citizens. And even in 2 months, we have been able to save 1 trillion. So there are a lot of savings that can be made in many other places.
One other thing, Doctor, that I think is going to be making an impact is what you refer to as Infrastructure Support Fund for the states. Now, I was wondering what exactly Infrastructure Support Fund for the states was, but then maybe in the absence of knowledge into what exactly it means, just looking at it, supporting the infrastructure, because these things need to be, infrastructure needs to be maintained from time to time. And so, you know, it's looking like he's taking quite a holistic look at the whole terrain. In fact, somebody was commending, I think this morning on one of the stations, that what this shows is that President Tinubu's administration is a listening administration. It is listening to the people. It knows what the people are going through, as the president himself demonstrated when he came in and actually said so, that look, it is tough. Everybody is affected. But he curiously spoke about saboteurs, people who are too big, and it wasn't fair that our Commonwealth was going into just a few, you know, humongous bank accounts and pockets. I was actually wondering at that as to, well, if this is known in very high quarters, why can't they plug that particular leak unless it's an ongoing matter?
No, you see, some of those people are also very influential people. And you know what it is when people have economic influence and political influence.
Okay.
You can almost get away with anything. And these reforms that have been put in place is an enduring way of blocking all those things. Apart from the, you know, this idea of using EFCC and all of that, or police to chase people, it's an enduring way to block those things. He said it. The 1 trillion could have gone into the pockets of a lot of people.
With that subsidy thing.
The same thing with the foreign exchange market.
In fact,
a lot too.
The foreign exchange market, you know, there was a time when our cards used to work way before for petty transactions, maybe even some that were not petty, and then it didn't during the Buhari era. I think I'm hearing that now, again, nowadays, the banks are allowing you to use your cards for those kind of transactions.
Exactly.
Even on with some banks on their apps, you can buy and sell Forex directly from inside the bank's app. So it looks like that loosening up of the whole of that multiple, you know, windows matter. It has begun to yield fruit already.
Exactly, exactly.
But Reverend Dominic, okay, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Chief YORI. Good morning to your guest.
Okay, good morning. Dr. Muda Yusuf is the guest.
He has spoken my mind to much certain extent. Can you hear me?
Well, I'm managing. I'm sure they'll give me a little more volume so we can hear you better. But please continue for now.
I said your guest has spoken very well.
Okay.
But YORI, to be frank to you, I support. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I support this government 100%.
Okay.
But yesterday's speech did not make sense to me personally.
Okay. In which aspect? In which regards?
I thought yesterday that Mr. President could have given us hope. If you remove hope from human being, there's nothing left for human being. What is that hope? We have sickness here. The sickness, we have the sickness and the symptom. The only way to solve this problem, Yori, is to put the refineries to work.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
YORI will come up on this month. Port Harcourt will come up on this month. Kaduna will come up on this month. So that at least we can remove the pressure on foreign, importation. What is making dollar to go high is importation. Do you know how many $1 trillion that goes to importing fuel? Yori, I have been in the aircraft that came to Niger Republic to refill. I know very well, I may be corrected, that Niger Republic is not a member of OPEC. The Niger Republic has a refinery. How could a member of OPEC have no refinery? If we refine in Nigeria, inflation will go down. Number two, Yori,
all right. Okay, Reverend Dominic, thank you very much for calling in. Let me bring that point to Dr. Yusuf.
Yes, what he said, I think, is very correct. I cannot agree more. Because there's an energy component of this conversation. We are talking about food, we are talking about transportation. There's the energy component of it. The concerns that we are faced with, energy is a major part of it. And first, the way to deal with this is what the government is also doing. First is to progress with the implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act. The president subscribes to it fully, and that reform is also on course. Because I had the privilege of seeing the Oil and Gas Advisory Committee report on oil and gas. So that component of it is on. And what the government is trying to do is to move away from the whole idea of getting refineries to be managed by bureaucrats. That is what killed all the refineries. Nigeria NLNG is in the oil and gas space. Look at the kind of results we are getting from Nigeria NLNG. They are giving dividends in billions of dollars to the Nigerian government. Yeah. And what is making the difference? Nigeria has 49%, the government has 49%. Private investors have 51%. And the entire management is private sector. So there is no serious political interference.
So they would...
And look at the kind of results they are giving us in terms of revenue, in terms of quality jobs and all of that.
So that's on a good course.
It's on a good course because of the structure of governance of those organizations. Okay. So we need to bring that back to the refineries. Yes, government is injecting some money and all of that, but we cannot continue with the trajectory of getting politicians and bureaucrats to be managing them. Okay. That's what they're doing.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. George, and thank you for holding on. Go ahead now, please.
Good morning, Uncle Yori, and good morning to the guests.
Yes.
Uncle Yori, the president's speech was all-embracing. I think the issue of refinery is a different subject. It is not that the government is not doing something about it. I'm aware they are doing something, but it's not yet made public. What surprises me after the speech, Uncle Yori, is the attitude of the NLC. After listening to all what the president has said, I wonder what is still instigating them, that they are saying that they are still going on strike tomorrow. Well, let me just say this, Uncle Yori. There are some people who are bent on bringing this country down just because they are a candidate they supported in the election did not win. Some of us will not wait for them to destroy our country. If you look at the NLC, the president of NLC, the secretary of NLC, the president of the Resident Doctors Union, the secretary of the Resident Doctors Union are all from one part of this country. And we saw all of them supporting one candidate during the election. What they are trying to do is to rise up with labor union to bring this government down.
Okay. Oh, well, okay, Mr. George.
Some of us will not allow it.
Thank you for pointing that out. And Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. George. Appreciate your call. Stay with us, please. We've got to take another break. We'll be right back.
Politics is defined as getting what, where, when, and how. But in the mix, many things come to play to shape the political fortune of any country.
Mr. Honorable Minister, that's how you misinform the public.
From the political actors to the electorate, campaign to voting, from debates to policy decisions, big events happen to engage us in constant conversation.
That's what we're looking for. Not some people who are talking about ethnicity. No.
Who is on your mind?
Don't worry.
Join me every day on Politics Tonight, where we dissect issues that shape our political destiny. Politics Tonight, weekdays on TVC News.
Okay, welcome back. And as Mr. George was saying, it was an and Dr. Yusuf had also said it was an all-encompassing speech touching on virtually everybody. Even as I noted, the Infrastructure Support Fund for the states, now I recall that when you look a bit further on in the speech, he explains how it's for things like evacuating produce from hinterlands and all that kind of a thing. But so, by and large, the way we are now, the president appealed, he did a very personal thing. You know, that is, he could have put it out through one of the one of the officials, but he realized that it was important. People wanted to hear from the leader, and I think we've not had this for quite a long while. And this probably is something that is much to be commended. That once, now he owned it. He was talking about, look, you need to understand my decisions. You know, the buck stops here. He's taking them. However you see them, let me now explain it again. Exactly. So that interaction with the people, I think it probably has yielded, even those that used to criticize him. Apart from what you started off with, which is that all of these things, we just need to be very sure that they are executed as intended. Exactly. That was the only criticism, if criticism one can call it, that people had. Apart from that, it looks like maybe Nigerians have been suitably encouraged to bear a bit more with the new direction of the administration.
Yeah, even from the speech, you could also feel his emotions about these things. You know,
he spoke about this country that he loves.
Exactly. You could feel his emotions. So there is no doubt that he's committed to alleviating the sufferings of the people. And he said that if there are other ways he could have achieved these things, he would have taken those ways. But there are no other ways.
We just have to go through it.
Yes.
For now.
So what is important now is this route that he has taken. Let us, as much as possible, get stakeholders involved in all these critical intervention areas so that you can get more results, you know, so that the outcomes can be better. Because no matter how brilliant you are as an economist or whatever, if you are delivering or putting together policies and you are not engaging people who are on ground, you know, it could affect the quality of your policy and the quality of your intervention.
It definitely will. What do you think of what is it now? The power, the electricity power people saying that they want to, you know, hike their rates?
Well, I don't think that is appropriate at this time. And it's also important.
Because they've done a public application.
Yes. It's also important to also be careful not to demonize subsidy. All over the world, subsidies are given to support the citizens. In 2022, because of the key challenges that people face globally with regard to this energy thing, energy subsidy was about $1 trillion in 2022. Whether you are talking of US, you are talking of EU and all of that. The problem with our own version of subsidy is that it is corruption ridden.
Yes. And now, hopefully, they're dismantling.
Dismantle that and rechannel it.
Yes.
Because the whole essence of government is to rechannel these resources, not to take it away completely.
No.
So we need subsidy in energy, in electricity. We have to work it out. Because you need electricity to power your industries. You need electricity to create jobs. It's not a luxury.
Well,
it's a key infrastructure component.
Dr. Yusuf,
you know,
we're going to have to leave it here. But at least we are on course, it would appear.
Of course. There's no doubt. We are on course.
We are on course here.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you very much for coming in to
Thank you.
highlight those things and also emphasize some of them that needed to be emphasized.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, then. So stay with us, please. We'll take a break and then we'll go over to Enugu State, so to speak, where we'll be meeting up with Professor Chidebere Onya, who is the secretary to the Enugu State government, right after this break.
And layered with different levels of impact.
Hello. What time did this happen? We will be right there.
We're interrupting this program to bring you a live telecast. Our regular programs will continue shortly. Please stay tuned.
But for being first, fair and accurate. TVC News, first with breaking news.
We're interrupting this program to bring you a live telecast. Our regular programs will continue shortly. Please stay tuned.
process, keeping in mind that there's been 22 months of engagement with people that have no mandate to tell people in Enugu State or the region what to do. So there's been a 22 months lapse in terms of the communication and taking a firm stand. That ended when this governor came in and decided to engage stakeholders across the board. First, he started with ensuring that every single block, from the market unions to the transport workers to organized labor to private sector groups to banks, teachers, the medical practitioners across the board, we had extensive engagements with them, and everybody came up with one resolution that they're tired of this whole non-sit-at-home nuisance and the implications for our competitiveness as a region, the implications to us, just from a psychological point of view, where people begin to look at productivity from a minimalist point of view. He engaged with them, and to do that also, he understood and listened to the people that security was a major issue. So he reconstituted back the Security Council, and there was a meeting ahead of even this announcement, and that was that His Excellency was working very closely with all the security outfits in Enugu and in Abuja to ensure that we provide adequate security in different areas. So what he didn't do was adopt the old approach, which was just boots on the ground, uniformed policemen. He worked with the people to ensure there was also an integration of intelligence to preempt rather than to react. So that's what notice that throughout this, there's been no incident, because we're working diligently to ensure that we protect the people of Enugu State to begin to minimize that whole fear factor that has been there over the last couple of months. So there's been extensive work done in security. There's a rapid response team. You will see presence of policemen across strategic points in the state, not just in the center, but also in the local governments. We're working with local government chairmen, town union leadership. So we took it to the grassroots, traditional rulers, to make sure that there's a cohesion and there's a buy-in. So people take ownership of the process. That's what His Excellency set out to do. So it's not just a lion-building declaration, but it's one that everybody sees the value in, and everybody's working intentionally to restart our economic base, which is what we need to do as a state.
Well, thank you very much, Prof, for that quite all-encompassing explanation. Mazi Okoroafo in Arochukwu, you've been waiting for quite a long while the Secretary to the Government made his point. Thank you for that. Now, please go ahead, Mazi.
Yeah, good morning, good morning, my brother in the studio. You see, I would like the government, Eastern Nigeria, Southeast, to leave the symptoms of this sit-at-home, go and find out the causes. Now, why am I saying that? First of all, let me thank the governor of Enugu State. He has tried. I think it's need for the governor, at least those shops that was locked, whether they say 100 and something, at least by now I must have opened their, but I don't know, but record can show. The school exams, the government has to be very, very tactical and make sure that this issue is cancelled forever. Because it affected the students that did their exam, WAEC, NANAPTEC, and even NECO that is going on. It affected many of them. It's psychologically. The 12% of them face when they are going to write the exam, they say that this is a very big problem. So there is need for the government of Eastern Nigeria to go back and look for the traditional rulers, parents, religious leaders, the elites. They should be called to sit up so that this thing should be eradicated. The youth.
Well, okay, Mazi Okorafo, thank you very much for that. Prof, I don't know if you care to react to his suggestion. Professor Onya?
Yes, I missed you for a minute. Could you repeat that, please?
Okay, I said, now that you've heard Mazi Okoroafo, who called in from Arochukwu, did you have any rejoinder to what he suggested?
Actually, his suggestion is part of our strategy. We've been able to engage all the stakeholders as mentioned and continue to engage them, church leaders, traditional rulers, and people that are of value to influence the decision of the regular Southeastern, and in our own case, the regular Enugu State citizen. So it's a collaborative process, and we do agree with him. It's something that we're doing, and the leadership of Dr. Peter Mba is very clear that this is not a lone process. This is a collaborative process. But in also doing that, there's clearly one government in Enugu State, and that is the government under his leadership. Okay. And to the point he made earlier about the shops, yes, the shops have been opened, the ones that have met the requirements, but it's important to note that this is a partnership again. You remember I had mentioned the market leadership and the market groups. Our action in following through is not something that was punitive, but it's something that will encourage those that have opened to continue to stay open, because the main reason that they had given earlier was security, and we have provided adequate security, within the state to ensure that people that want to go to the market, citizens that want to go to the market to shop, can go to the market knowing that the shops are open. And that's also understanding that the government is going to provide security for them to be able to carry on with their regular activities, which is what the governor has constantly mentioned in different settings, that this is really important, that people feel comfortable. Indeed. And if they don't do that, if citizens are not feeling comfortable to come out, then how much more an investor that is coming into the state, how would they feel that Enugu State is competitive if people are going to work 4 days in a week? Mm-hmm. This is something that is an anomaly for us. Indeed. And something that the governor is very determined that he's going to make sure that we stop. But in doing that, it has to be collective, and that's what he's been doing, working with all stakeholders. Even as of yesterday, if you had seen your clips, your reporters would have shown you that Enugu State is active. Today, it's been, whatever declaration has been ignored, people are moving around their businesses and there's adequate security. Well, people are taking ownership of this process, and not just something that is being directed, but something that they say they're going to do. Youths are coming out and demonstrating and saying that we're tired of being forced to sit at home. The gentleman that spoke talked about exams and all that. How can students be competitive when one day of every week that they should focus on rigorous curriculum issues, be it sitting at home and playing soccer? Okay. This is not something that this region is known for. So it's a collective process, but it's a gradual one to bring people away from what they have been used to, over a couple of months. Okay. And Dr. Peter Mba's administration is very, very focused on addressing that. And we are achieving success, and everybody can see that. We're ignoring the noise, and we're focusing on really to deliver for the people, all that he has set out to do in his manifesto. Okay. The days that he has set out, we're working diligently.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Tony in the UK has been waiting. He wants to come into the conversation.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Shaya. I like your program. I'm like, hello, are you hearing me?
Please go ahead, Tony. Continue. Continue, Tony.
You see, when a child is crying, he's crying for something. Since the detection of carnal issues, you can see and Nigerians know about it. There are things when something is happening in a region, that's a way to sort it out. Something like infrastructure, building schools, doing some other things, making all these things available. What people are crying for, the people, the region, whatever is their problem. You look at it as solving them immediate, and that will give them hope that, these people that neglected them, they now accept them, they have now heard them, they now seen what they are debating for. And if everything can have it.
Okay, Tony. Sorry to butt in, Tony, but thank you very much for calling in with that point. Professor Onya will now respond to it because we are running out of time. Prof.
So Tony, good point. It's important to know that this is what the government of Dr. Peter Mba is focused on doing. the only way we can build on infrastructure, improve our infrastructure, is if we're able to crowd in resources. So our investment outlook will help us crowd in private capital to address our infrastructural need, and also help us, get revenue back to invest in improving our educational sector, our medical sector, and other areas that people have been clamoring for. But it's important that we delineate the two arguments, one about infrastructure need and criminality. What we are dealing with is criminality. This is not a voice of the people where they are clamoring for these things. These things are people using fear to cause harm on their own brothers and sisters, and I'm not sure how that has to do with the root cause of the issue around sit at home. So it's important that we delineate, separate both conversations so we don't mix them and people get confused. Infrastructural need is important. That's what this government is set out to do. Dr. Peter Mbai set actually a plan with days, which is something that is not common in governance in Nigeria. He set days, hard days, for very difficult infrastructure delivery, and he's working diligently to achieve that. But the only way we can also do that is if we allow the economics of growth in Enugu to take place without people trying to undermine it through the economics of fear, because some people are benefiting from others being scared and sitting at home.
All right.
So he's very clear that he understands both arguments, and he's working very intentionally to ensure that the infrastructure needs in Enugu State, the economic environment for investors, is clearly conducive so that the ecosystem of growth is put in place. And if we don't do that,
I beg your pardon, Prof. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Prof, but we've completely run out of time. But I do want to thank you, Professor Chidiebere Onyen, Secretary to the Enugu State Government, for coming on our program this morning to sort of encourage us, as it were, that the matter is very, very much in hand in Enugu, and the people are gradually overcoming their fear and are coming out because the government is doing its best to support whoever wants to go to the market, go to his business upon a Monday. Thank you very much once more, Professor Onya, for coming on the program. All right, then. So that's our program. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am YORI FOLARIN. Bye-bye for now.
Never miss a moment. Instant breaking news from all over the globe. Live streaming of your favorite programs delivered directly to you. Watch anytime from anywhere on your mobile or smart devices. Download the TVC News app today. Available on Google Play and Apple Store.